Operation Economic Outcast, an unprecedented campaign against the Islamic Republic of Iran and its enablers. In the Second World War, D-Day marked the historic beginning of a campaign with our allies to target and drive the enemy from its positions, including those in third countries. Today, in that same spirit, we are launching an economic onslaught against Iran's financial connections around the globe. Our objective is to sever every economic lifeline that sustains this tyrannical regime until Tehran stands alone. Iran's fanatics devote themselves to death to America and seek nuclear weapons to do just that. They have murdered and maimed more of our citizens and service members than any other terrorist regime on earth. And they have been at war against America, their neighbors in the Gulf, and much of the world for 47 years. President Trump has taken action that his predecessors have long deferred. And under his leadership, America is no longer managing the Iranian threat. We are ending it. Our great armed forces have laid the groundwork for achieving the President's objective of preventing Iran from ever obtaining nuclear weapons. They have shown America's resolve to finally end this threat. And the strength of America's economy under President Trump allows us to wage this sustained financial operation alongside the might of our military. Iran now faces a very clear choice with only two paths before them: complete global isolation and a subsistence economy, or a path back to normalcy with an opportunity to rejoin the global economy. Today, we are launching Operation Economic Outcast to foreclose every other option available to the Iranian regime. Treasury has mapped every node, every facilitator, and every network that Iran has used to smuggle oil and evade sanctions. Beginning today, the actions of Treasury and other agencies will tighten the noose and block every potential source of revenue that funds the IRGC and the evil Iranian regime. We are enforcing a zero leakage approach. There will be no minimal breathing space for the regime to rebuild its capacity to inflict terror against America and the world. The final refuge of this regime is a mistaken conclusion of nations that still finance the Iranian threat in the hopes of evading it. It is no longer acceptable to operate in the gray spaces of this conflict. Countries cannot claim they are blind to enabling this activity. Iran's enablers purchase, transport its petroleum. They facilitate the flow of its finances through exchange houses and free trade zones. They welcome Iran's flights and maintain registries on its behalf. They turn a blind eye to seaborne fuel transfers and overland transits. They condone illicit use of their banks, all the while concealing the extent of their complicity. The President is making phone calls to world leaders with specific requests to cease their interactions with the regime. We are already seeing results. Over the weekend, comments from Iranian leadership clearly acknowledged the effect of this campaign, and nations that facilitate any interactions with the regime should quickly heed our message. Those who stand with the United States will reap the rewards of our partnership. Those who tether themselves to the Iranian regime should expect to share in the isolation of a withering regime. Teams from Treasury, State, and the U.S. military are now meeting with their global counterparts to tell them that the United States expects action. Every country has a defined timeline to shut down activities we have identified. If they do not take action, we will do so unilaterally through Treasury authorities. For example, every branch of Bank Melay must be shuttered and dark. And let me be clear, any entity that facilitates money laundering on behalf of Iran will be removed from the US dollar system. The clock just started ticking. The new sectoral sanctions determinations issued today target 5 of Iran's most vital lifelines that it exploits in other countries: digital assets, technology, gold, aviation, and shipping. These measures broaden secondary sanctions risk for anyone foolish enough to continue conducting business with this regime, and will accelerate the speed with which we pursue them. As I speak, Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control is also sanctioning over 60 entities, individuals, and vessels around the world that enable the Iranian regime to procure illicit nuclear and missile technology, conduct cyber operations, and generate oil revenue. This is a sustained campaign to collapse every last option for Iran. Let there be no ambiguity as to the position of the United States. An economic engagement of any kind with this murderous regime will expose those responsible to the full reach of American power. For decades, this regime has drawn strength from a calculus that regards Iranian retaliation as certain and American enforcement as negotiable. Under President Trump, that era is over. To the ordinary soldiers supporting this regime, as more and more of your paychecks stop or are supposedly just delayed, ask whether your commanders are leading your country to triumph or to ruin. And recall that the Berlin Wall fell when ordinary soldiers decided not to shoot at their own people. And to those who enable Tehran, do not discount the cost of testing Washington's resolve. No nation should expect to enjoy the rewards of our system while helping those who seek to destroy it. It is now a time for world leaders to make a decision between prosperity and isolation, peace and terror, America and Iran. The campaign we begin today will gather force with every day that follows, and it will not end until this regime stands alone. With that, I welcome your questions. David from Reuters.
Hi, thanks, Secretary. One of the most powerful tools you have at your disposal is the ability to impose secondary sanctions on banks and financial institutions that facilitate transactions for Iran. Chinese banks have often been talked about being targeted, but we don't see any of those institutions targeted here. Is that something that is coming in this campaign, or is the very delicate trade truce with China something that could prohibit you from going that far and taking that very big step?
We want to make clear here today that no one is above the reach of U.S. sanctions, that if they facilitate transactions and are part of the ecosystem that turns Iranian oil into money, into repression, they will be targeted. We find that the best way to engage with countries is through quiet diplomacy, and we are level setting with every country to tell them our expectations. We know who they are, they know who they are, so when the hammer of U.S. Treasury actions falls upon them, they will have no one to blame but themselves. So, Richard from CBS.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. You said the president is calling world leaders with specific asks and that there is a defined timeline. Who is he calling and what are the asks?
We're not going to name names. That we've already seen some results, and that I am confident the president, as you all know, is quite persuasive, and we are following his calls up with calls from visits and calls from the State Department and from the U.S. Treasury, expecting them, or telling the leaders, the countries, and the entities exactly what we expect and the timelines. And I would expect that very quickly, if they do not respond, then you will see the ramifications of their actions.
Can you say how far the timelines are?
Again, I'm not going to set timelines, but we do not have infinite patience here. Jennifer?
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. Jennifer Schonberger with Yahoo Finance. You just said moments ago that no one is above U.S. sanctions. What specific secondary sanctions or penalties is Treasury prepared to levy against Chinese banks and shipping firms if they do not comply? And then secondly, as you look to take these unprecedented sanctions, you've also said that as the Iran conflict fades and oil prices recede, that will help bring down long-term bond yields. In the meantime, you have mentioned your toolkit, and I'm curious if you are looking at reducing auction sizes for longer-term dated Treasury debt going forward, and what other actions you may consider from that toolkit.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, why don't we work backwards? We issued the quarterly refunding announcement 2.5 weeks ago. We are going to continue with our regular program of auctions, so you will be hearing from us again at the beginning of next quarter. In terms of, as I said, every country, every entity should know that they should be prepared to face U.S. sanctions. And no one is above this. We are going to hold everyone accountable, and this is economic asphyxiation of this regime. And Jennifer, as I said, no one should test our resolve. So, Josh from New York Post.
You said you weren't going to name names, but there's been some reports that the United Arab Emirates is among some of the first nations to take seriously these words from the United States to cut off all business interactions with Iran. Is UAE leading the way in this respect?
I would think that the actions that they took last week were not coincident, but likely causal. And I would expect that we would see a broad array of countries taking similar actions as we continue our engagement. The UAE have been very good partners and have taken the brunt of the Iranian attacks in the Gulf. And what have these countries gotten over the years from appeasing Iran? They were subject to violent attacks. While we were bombing Iran, they were bombing them. So it shows that with this regime, appeasement does not work. And on the other side, with this regime, trying to buy appeasement will no longer work in the eyes of the United States of America. And I want to emphasize that we are spreading out across the world as we speak, that you will see a wave of sanctions when you leave this meeting today, and you should expect that cadence to continue. And I would expect that you will see a major announcement of a financial institution being sanctioned by the end of this week. So, Samira from Sky. Yep. No. No. Are you? No. I'm looking for Samira from Sky.
Al Jazeera English.
No. Hi.
Does the United States and President Trump still want Canada to become a state? He did say that they're getting all the benefits of being a state without being one.
I think he would like Canada to come to the table and negotiate in good faith. They were offered quite a good deal last week. They chose to reject it. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Carney rose to power on an anti-American, anti-Trump platform. I believe he was more than 20 points behind, and he seems to have gone back to his old playbook. And I think one has to ask oneself, is he trying to benefit himself the Liberal Party, or the Canadian people, because they were offered a very good job. So, yep, you.
Thank you to Secretary Bessent. If I could shift to bond yields quickly. We saw them tick down today after some turbulence and going up last week. Can you tell us if there's any possibility that there will be more bond buybacks anytime soon?
Again, we haven't bought a single bond yet. The next time we have an operation is September 9th. So we will see on September 9th. All right. One more. Let's see. You in the front.
You described this as an economic D-Day, but D-Day wasn't a threat of an invasion, and the U.S. didn't give a timeline to Germany. So why not impose the sanctions today?
Well, we are giving everyone the opportunity to remedy bad behavior. Why would I want to blow up the global financial system? We believe that it is important to level set and give people a cure period, but they should know that that will move very quickly and that we are serious. Secondary sanctions are a very powerful tool, and we here at Treasury, this is Jean Lang, the acting Undersecretary for Terrorism Finance, and in the Terrorism Finance Department and at OFAC, the reason we are able to use secondary sanctions is because we do not take their use lightly. So we believe that a warning shot and a level set of expectations is appropriate. And if people do not want to meet our expectations, then we expect, and they should expect, that they will leave the dollar system. Okay, thank you all.
Okay, that was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announcing that Operation Economic Outcast is in effect. It is designed to sever every economic lifeline globally for the Iranian regime. Not mincing words, you can choose to be part of the global economic community, or you can choose economic isolation and subsistence. Mike Lee, what do you make of this?
So, big headline, a major financial institution is going to be sanctioned by the end of this week. The quote-unquote religious zealots all have their money in the UAE. I don't know if all of them, but a lot of them. And there's substantial wealth from the leaders of Iran in their offshore money in the United Arab Emirates, in Dubai. So the compliance from Dubai, it is going to put pressure on them. But look, when you go with these sanctions and you want to kick these countries out of the dollar-denominated system, that's all well and good until the dollar is no longer the reserve currency, because people don't want to be kicked off it. And so we saw the Biden administration try to do this to Russia. And there are some boomerang effects and some problems here. That could come up, some unintended negative consequences from using the dollar like a weapon. And I mean, look, if you start looking at the dollar as a reserve currency, there's nowhere else you can park excess reserves. Excess reserves meaning global trade is not a zero-sum game, right? So it's not an even exchange of widgets for farm goods, right? There's always going to be excess cash on either side. And as many problems as the U.S. has, show me a global bond market as liquid and as safe as the T-bill market, where you can get, roughly 4% overnight. So but if this can be weaponized against your country for the political whims of the United States in that moment, you start running into unintended negative consequences.
I got a little wince coming out of Marcus Lemonis here. Get in on this.
Let's give a little credit to the UAE. On August 19th, they actually said, we're not going to do this anymore, and I think that gave some of the catapult. If you look at where all the money is flowing in the research that we did while he was speaking, a lot of it's going through Hong Kong, Singapore, the UAE. I'm not sure it's a dollar challenge. I think it's that we're not going to give you any sort of currency of any kind, no matter where it's coming from. I don't know that I would isolate it specifically to the dollar. What we're essentially saying is, if you buy oil from Iran, there's going to be a problem. If you try to create shadow shipments, there's going to be a problem. If you try to ship your money through Singapore, Dubai, Hong Kong, there's going to be a problem. And we see you and we know who you are.
Can I address the elephant in the room? Nobody has talked about China. 80 to 90 90% of Iran's export. Well, you brought up Hong Kong and Singapore.
91%, yeah.
Right, okay. So they have been shut down because of the blockade in the Strait. But this is going to be a huge issue when President Xi comes here. I believe it's September 24th. I mean, this is enemy number one on the list, if there is any enemy at all. Also, other countries that do business, not necessarily oil, but take other imports from Iran or do financial transactions with them. Iraq, Turkey, India, Afghanistan, and of course the UAE, who has already been under target and has ceased some of its operations to get ahead of this to a certain degree. To me, this is a huge China story. It's a little concerning because these ties run so deep. Now we're dealing with the Canada issue, which some of the reporters had asked about. And you're trying to starve out Iran in this way, but you're involving China. Now, China has bought a lot of this oil. They bought it on the cheap. They've stored it. They're going to be able to run their operations for quite some time. But at some point, China's going to need oil, too.
Or buy it from Canada.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, what happens next, I don't know, but this is incredible what they're trying to do here. And China is just the massive elephant in the room.
Well, two things the Treasury Secretary said, Taylor. He said, no one is above the reach of this when asked about China, okay? He also said we prefer quiet diplomacy on this. So he's not coming out and saying, here's what we're going to do to China. But he's kind of coming out and saying, we're letting them know what's going to happen. What do you think?
I do like the no naming names approach. They've said today's actions target a network of brokers, companies, and shadow fleets all over. But it starts with the UAE, Hong Kong, China, Singapore, Switzerland, and Europe are also in there as well. So there are some other countries, I think, that are further down on the list that aren't top of mind. Couple comments. I agree with you. When we sanctioned Russia and they couldn't use that SWIFT payment system, they got around the U.S. sanctions because they started trading in yuan instead of dollar. And my worry is the more that we do that, the less effective sanctions are because people will just trade in yuan. The counter to that, though, is once you put your money in yuan, you can't get it out because China won't let you get your money out. And I believe that the U.S. dollar will remain the world's reserve currency for the rest of my lifetime because we are the most liquid capital country. But I do get worried about the change on the margin, about a country that can so easily shift from dollar to yuan, and China is there ready and able. Speaking of China, do we care that we have a Treasury Secretary who's talking about bond yields, and China is the third largest holder of our debt? And do we need them to show up at holding $633 billion of our debt so far? Now, that's only about 1.5% to 2% of our total debt. But we need China as a buyer for our debt. We have the UK and Japan first and second.
I'll just push back on that.
Please.
They do business when they face the rest of the world. They're doing very little international trade with their own currency. They're doing it in dollar denominated. So they need our treasuries to back. That is where they are parking their excess reserves. So look,
not in gold, not in Bitcoin.
Well, they've been moving away. That $663 billion was once north of $1 trillion.
Double. Yeah.
And so they are moving away, but they're running a dual deficit. And so it can go on for a long time, meaning they have a trade deficit and a fiscal deficit. So China was a merchant economy, and as they become more developed, their demand for for commodities, for oil, for iron ore, for all these things means they're in a structural trade deficit that's not going away, and they have a fiscal deficit because they are a communist country. And while centralized planning can do some things extremely well, in the end, it always fails. So. Plus, they have a huge demographic problem going on there. So in terms of our treasury, right, like the whole BRIC strategy, the whole BRIC idea was not to take out the dollar's reserve currency. It's so you had a method and a vehicle to get around U.S. sanctions, right? And so I wonder if this is one of the unintended consequences of this. But as an overarching, and I kind of wish I started with this, I think this is the right approach to Iran versus, the bombs over Baghdad approach.
Well, let me throw this piece out. We talked about this in the first hour. The Treasury Secretary mentioned the Berlin Wall.
Yeah.
And he said the Berlin Wall fell when East German soldiers stopped shooting at their own people. Okay, he said this in the middle of this talk. He said to the soldiers in Iran, when the people who are supposed to be giving you a paycheck say it's not coming or it's delayed, ask yourself, where are these leaders leading you?
That this is a little different. The only reason I would say that is because the IRGC, whether or not they're getting their paychecks, they are religiously and ideologically motivated in a way that I don't think matches any other circumstance we've ever seen around the world. And I still think they will shoot at their own people because they believe so strongly in the religious aspect of this and winning. That money is important. Everybody's got to get paid, but I don't see them
fundamentalist
backing
mindset
down.
is too
It's
strong.
very different.
How deep does that run through the ranks of the soldiers who have to shoot their own people? The Ayatollahs have money in bank accounts around, right? I'm just saying, like,
think we will
there's
see.
religious zeal and there's religious zeal. Anyway, this is Economic Outcast is the name of the operation, complete isolation for the Iranian economy. We will see where it leads in the days ahead. We'll have more after this.